Eric, welcome to the Manchester Lean Startup Group. There's quite a good turnout today, and we're really glad to have you here. Thank you for your time, and I'll let you get on with your talk. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Are we gonna be able to take questions? Is that a possibility?
We will be able to take questions whenever you're ready. If you want to take questions now.
Great. Well, no. First of all, let me just say hi. Can you turn the camera so I can see what's going on?
One second.
No, yeah. Turn the laptop on.
There we are.
Hey, everybody! Oh, it's very cool. It's an honor. I just saw on Twitter someone was tweeting that they're watching the live stream of me Skyping into the meeting. World. And I was like, wow, this is getting really meta. I think it'll take 4 minutes if I could then three-way call that person and bring them onto the stream with me. They could watch themselves in the live stream. This is getting odd. The norms of interpersonal relations and group meetings, I mean, everything has to change in the world of the internet, and it's super cool. So thank you for welcoming me, and it's very strange, I gotta tell you, to be a talking head up on a wall. It's not, usually whoever's in my position in a movie is the bad guy. Or the 1984, Big Brother. So it's a little strange, but I do my best to just say a few words and really talk about why I'm excited, and then I hope we can have a conversation, because as you know, I actually have to listen to the sound of my own voice quite often, and it gets a little boring, so I would love the chance to have a real conversation with you guys. When people ask me in fact, I was just at an event yesterday called FailCon, which is the conference of failure here in San Francisco. It's very popular, as you can imagine. We're talking about failure all day long. And there were press there, and I did a bunch of press interviews afterwards. And of course, the press always wanted to ask me about my personal story and how did I become, so famous and blah, blah, blah. And first of all, I'm like, guys, you're really missing the story. I'm not the story, but no one ever listens to me. Because I try to tell them Lean Startup is a movement. And they think I'm just being grandiose. I think I'm, I have inflated ideas about my own role in the world. But I said, okay, well, listen, let me just describe to you what I see happening. In hundreds of cities around the world, including some that you, as a product of the very poor American education system, could not find on a map, okay? Many of these cities I've never even heard of before, people are gathering on a regular basis, out of the limelight, not trying to get famous, not going around telling everyone how great they are. They're having a conversation with each other about how to advance the state of the art in entrepreneurship. And people who are speaking up in their local sort of ecosystems, trying to create something really new all over the world, to be supportive of this new science of entrepreneurship, to speak up and change the way that work is done in our society. So you call that whatever you want. I call it a movement. And we're going to build a new science of entrepreneurship. The science doesn't happen on stage. Science happens in the laboratory. The people who are actually advancing the state of the art, not people like me, travel around talking and getting on stage and getting the accolades and being that doesn't matter. That stuff is all crap. The press that's excited about us right now will turn on us in a heartbeat when this becomes fad, but now it's like, we'll have failed to change the world overnight tomorrow, and writing those articles. That's all noise. The real work of this is what I'm doing. Like I said, out of the limelight, not trying to get on TV, trying to actually build companies that will make the world a better place. And that's what inspires me, I think is so cool. So, it's actually an honor for me to get a chance to do this. It's surreal it is to be up on the call and to get to be part of your meeting, and I really appreciate you welcoming me, and I appreciate the people who are watching the live stream of me Skyping, and that's just, but anyway, thank you to the people too. And so, if it's okay with you, I would really like to talk about real things that are going on. So real startup questions from real founders who are actually struggling with something right. Because I think people basic the philosophy of Lean Startup, the idea to build, measure, learn feedback, the minimum viable product, the pivot, the stuff that stickers, people are pretty excited about. Everyone needs a good slogan. Get out of the building's great slogans that you can put on a t-shirt. And I got t-shirts. But to me, really advanced that we really have to put on as a movement are questions around, how do we hold entrepreneurs accountable? What is the right accounting system for progress in a startup? And I've been going on trying to tell people about something called innovation accounting, which is in the book. that does not fit on a bumper sticker because it involves math and it's kind of boring and it's really tedious. It's not like this. It's not like the movies of entrepreneurship. It's not about, ooh, how do you have a great idea, do publicity stunts. It's like a real nitty-gritty everyday work of really trying to answer the question, okay, every day of my startup's life is a precious commodity that I do not want to waste. How do I actually make sure that that day was a day well spent? What are the indicators of progress we should look like? So that's the stuff I want to talk about, but it's your meeting, so I'm at your disposal. I'm happy to answer as many questions as we can fit in. And I don't know, someone will tell me what the mechanism is. Hopefully people don't have to Skype into a third location to live stream the question here, so that then other people can watch on the live stream in Tokyo. It's very confusing. Anyway, thank you. I really appreciate the chance to do this, and I appreciate you paying attention and welcoming me in.
Thank you, Eric. We're just going to get a few questions from people now. So, anyone? Do you want to ask Eric a question? Are you still there, Eric?
I'm sorry?
Are you still there?
I'm still here. I'm
Great.
still here. You guys went.
We're just waiting for the first person to ask that question now.
If I stumped all of Manchester, I'm going to be really proud of myself.
Great. Someone?
Can we hear more about this innovation accounting then?
Can we hear more about this innovation accounting, please?
Why, yes, you can. Oh, boy, is that a dangerous question. Yeah, okay. I don't have a whiteboard, and it's hard to do. I don't have a spreadsheet to show you here, so it's a little challenging to do the math, but let me try to give you the flavor of what I'm talking about. Let's just do a quick exercise, quick show of hands. Who's ever written a business plan? Raise your hand. Okay, keep your hand up if the business plan had a spreadsheet in the back. Okay, keep your hand up if the spreadsheet in the back said how much money you were going to make in year 5 of the startup. Okay, keep your hand up if the spreadsheet said you would make at least $100 million US equivalent. Okay, keep your hand up if you actually made $100 US, $100 million US. No hands left. Oh, I can't believe it. I got all the hands down. I've done that exercise in hundreds of places all over the world, and I've never had anyone keep their hand up by the end. The only difference really in Silicon Valley, by the way, and other places, is that in Silicon Valley, everyone's hand stays up all the way through the last question, and they all go down in unison. Because everyone here knows that you have to at least promise $100 million in year 5 in your business plan. But we're not actually very good at making plans that then subsequently result in that much revenue. We're just good at boasting about our excellent plan. You may have noticed by watching our tech blog. So what's going on there? Why do we make these spreadsheets? What is the point of it? Well, the original practice of building business plans that had quantified targets in it comes from general management and the 20th century system of management that came up through General Motors and all these all these big companies that had to solve a problem, which is how do I hold my managers accountable when I'm a giant, sprawling, multi-division company? And a really good way to hold them accountable in the old days, in like the 19th century, it was just, if you did better than last year, you get a raise. If you did worse, you get fired. And that was a pretty good system, because if you sold more units than the year before, you probably did a pretty good job. It was not a bad system. But it had some problems. Like, for example, what if it's a recession and everybody does worse than last year? Who should get fired? What if it's a booming year and everyone did better than last year? An idiot could have sold more than last year. How do I know that you as a manager did a good job? So traditional accounting, really its purpose was not what we use it for today primarily, which is just to keep track of where the money went. That's not what it was for. It was a system of accountability to make specific forecasts of what is supposed to happen in what they called at General Motors the standard year. They would sell the standard volume of cars, and then they would adjust the forecast based on macroeconomic conditions to figure out if a manager sold better than the forecast or not. Does that sound familiar to anybody? If you worked in any big company, you know the managers who get promoted are the ones who are ahead of plan, right? Ahead of the forecast. And that's what we do. It's like, if you're on time, on budget, high quality, milestones achieved, then you get promoted. And as soon as you start to think about that in the conditions of extreme uncertainty that Lean Startup is designed to solve, you realize that doesn't make any sense at all. Because if we're building something that nobody wants, why would we be so proud that we did it on time and on budget? So if you really believe in the uncertainty that Lean Startup is designed to confront, you gotta say these milestones don't make sense. But our venture capitalists haven't really gotten the memo, and neither have most entrepreneurs. We build these business plans, we put these graphs in them, and we make these predictions, and our investors are like, excellent. You told me how much money you were going to make every quarter between now and our IPO. And then, and if you've actually raised money, you'll have the experience of a few board meetings in when revenue is not at target, and it's like, uh-oh, now what? And of course, now you want to make a story about, oh, we learned so much. So even though we didn't hit our targets, we learned so much, you should still give us more money. And every investor on the planet is like, yeah, I've heard a really interesting story about learning, but guess what? I can't deposit learning in the bank. I can't take my management fees on learning, and I can't return learning to my limited partners. So no thanks, you're fired. A lot of startup CEOs go by the wayside as soon as they use the L word. So what we want to do is say, let's not have the negotiation over these bogus spreadsheets and forecasts that we know are wrong. Instead, let's try to create what I call learning milestones, which are quantitative milestones, which are designed to show that not that we are already successful, but that we're making progress towards being successful. And it has to be quantitative because, like I said, learning in good stories you can't deposit. So let's say you're trying to build a viral business. Now we all know that viral business, what we call a viral engine of growth, is determined by one single number that's important above all other numbers, which is the viral coefficient. Everyone knows the math of the viral coefficient? Yes? Okay, I see some nods. So if you have a viral coefficient greater than 1.0, boom, you're set. And if you have a viral coefficient less than 1.0, you're dead. You're going to have exponential shrinkage of your business. It's a disaster. So it's very binary. It's like product market fit for a viral business is defined as viral coefficient greater than 1.0. So now let's say that you build your MVP and you ship it, and your first cohort of customers have viral coefficient 0.5. You're doomed, right? Well, not so fast. Even if the first learning milestone, which is to figure out where we are right now, to establish the baseline number, even if that's bad news, I say better to have bad news that's true rather than good news that we just made up. So let's celebrate the fact that we got bad news, but true bad news, and now we can start to improve cohort by cohort and say, well, forget the gross numbers, the vanity metrics, how many millions of messages got sent. Anyone watch the Apple event today? They got 180 billion messages sent on iMessage. Like, I don't know, that could just be one guy with a really active iPhone to tell you what's going on. They, of course, know the messages sent per person, the retention rate of iMessage over time, how many, they know they know all the real metrics, but they don't share them with the press. They don't share them with you and me because they know the vanity metrics don't reveal anything about their business. So they don't have to worry about sharing them, but that's what we call lying, okay? So it's okay for Apple to do that. They can do whatever they want, but don't lie to yourself. Don't look at the vanity metrics. Don't show the vanity metrics to your investors. That's just lying. Let's look at cohort by cohort. Are we actually making progress in making the product better? Are we getting closer to product market fit? So if we have month after month viral coefficient 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, that's progress. And that's getting closer to product market fit. Even though, remember, viral coefficient of 0.9 is still a disaster. It's still exponential shrinkage of the business. So you can't look at the gross numbers, you gotta look at the trends and making progress. Now, one last thing, and then I will stop on innovation accounting unless you are so dumb as to ask me a second question about it, in which case, God help me. I think it's interesting, but I know a lot of people are just like, the math, it's killing. I understand. Last concept. Sometimes you'll see this pattern. Cohort after cohort, you'll have viral coefficient 0.5, 0.55, 0.56, 0.565, 0.56575. Anyone ever see that pattern? Where you're just hitting this asymptote, right? You're basically not making any progress. But here's the curse. The numbers are still up and to the right. And I can't tell you how many startups I meet with that are like, listen, yeah, sure, the numbers aren't what we want them to be, but it's up and to the right. We're making progress, so we're just going to keep going. That is the number one way you wind up in the land of the living dead. Because you're making progress, but it doesn't matter that you're making progress like better than you were before. It only matters, are you making progress towards the goal that you outlined at the beginning? Are we actually realizing the company's vision? And the reason why I mentioned that asymptote scenario is that that is the number one indicator that it is time to pivot. Your experiments have reached the point of diminishing returns, and it's time to move to a new strategy. So innovation accounting is done to make those incredibly difficult decisions, like what should be in my MVP, which metrics specifically do I measure, and how do I know that it's time to pivot? We can make those decisions, not easy, but easier by giving them a quantitative framework that can get everybody on the same page. Okay, are you sorry you asked now? Okay, good. I'm glad to hear it. Thank you for bearing with me.
Oh yeah. Mute. Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, go on quickly. Sorry, we just muted you over there. We muted the mic. Next question, anyone? Ben. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, so you're measuring your metrics.
Do you want to come over here and speak?
Okay. Hi. So you're measuring your metrics. What would you say was a kind of a healthy growth rate, sort of in terms of percentage?
It's interesting. The really good investors who do this a lot have great heuristics for these kind of questions. Like I'm sure a lot of you saw Paul Graham's essay recently where he talked about how in YC they have like week over growth targets that they tell their investors to hit. And those heuristics are great. I have no objection to people using heuristics that are effective. But I'm a little bit dubious because I've met too many founders that try to juice the vanity metrics through stunts when they're pressed to hit growth targets. Because growth is fundamentally the exhaust of a business's engine that's working well. So it's like instead of measuring the speed, we're measuring the exhaust. So you can say, listen, a car that's really racing fast, it's accelerating, will be producing 3% more exhaust, minute by minute, or whatever rate of exhaust. And a lot of founders, I think this is real incredibly stupid. They're like, oh, great, I can produce more exhaust. Let me go do a press release. I can go juice the numbers. Let me go do a big stunt. And if I string enough stunts together, I know companies that are in a multi-week, multi-month program, and they're like, look, 10 weeks means 10 stunts. All I got to do is have up into the right on demo day, and I'm set. I can't tell you, I hear that quite often. So I would prefer that instead of worrying about the vanity metrics and gross growth rates, we say, well, where does growth come from? What's the cause? What's the underlying cause of growth? And I want to differentiate between two kinds of growth, what I call sustainable growth and stunts, unsustainable growth. Sustainable growth is characterized by one simple rule, that new customers come from the actions of past customers. That's it. Now, it sounds simple, but every PR stunt in the world is a violation of that rule. Because if I go get if I go run a giant Super Bowl ad base, I might take my investors' money and do a bunch of advertising. That's unsustainable. It's a one-time activity. I only can do that as much as I can get investors' money. Now, some people have learned to do the feedback loop where you get a bunch of investors' money, blow that money on stunts, get a bunch of vanity metrics and raise money before anyone noticed, and you just keep riding that investor curve all the way up. But that is what we call Ponzi scheme. Okay, that has nothing to be proud of. No customers benefit from that. So no. If you want to invest in paid acquisition using what we call the paid engine of growth, you can do that in a sustainable way very easily. Just invest the revenue from customers into acquiring new customers. And in the paid engine of growth, there's only one number that matters, the marginal profit per customer. Because if you make more money per customer than it costs you to acquire, you can get more. And the higher that margin is, the faster you grow. We already went through the viral engine of growth, right? What happens with viral coefficient? That's just new customers come from the action of past customers through direct viral transmission. And there's a third engine of growth, which I call sticky, which is for compounding interest type businesses that have extremely high retention. The natural word of mouth rate compounds and you can get nonlinear growth that way. So the three engine of growth, paid, viral, and sticky. Each engine is a causal theory for why growth should happen. Growth doesn't just happen just because. It happens because of specific transmission vectors between customers. And if you can track and understand those vectors, you can grow by improving the efficiency of the engine rather than just pumping out a bunch more exhaust. Does that make sense? If you actually have the discipline to build that kind of model and track your business that way, the companies that I've worked with that do that, it is amazing the revelation you get when you realize that most of the work you are doing is having absolutely no impact on your engine of growth. So why are you doing it? And so like we talk about eliminating waste, one of the biggest wastes is work that makes no impact on customers. So we just clear all that out, and then now we have stuff we know to work on. So people have started to call that growth forensics. I noticed on Twitter, like for VC's point of view, VC's already pitched the vanity metrics. And like, well, where's the forensic expert I can call, give me an x-ray on is this growth real or not? Is it sustainable or not? Well, you don't need an expert. this theory is free and freely available for the world to use. It's just that as much as people are nodding their head while I'm talking right now, the vast majority of startups and VCs who I pitched this to have been like, yeah, that's nice, but I want to go back to my normal ways. Because it is a difficult and I think fairly radical departure from the way we're used to thinking about growth and startups, and so I understand people don't want to change. So I mean, I understand that. Even many of you who are nodding right now are not going to do this. But if even one of you gives this a try, I will view this whole conversation as a success. So please take that under consideration.
Okay, the next question, Shaf. Are we unmuted?
Yeah, I think so.
Shaf?
Hi.
Hi Eric, Shaf from Twocial.com, that's TWO. Quick question, do you think that people misunderstand the message in Lean Startup? Because people in the whole MVP, people often miss out the V. So I've come across people who just throw out minimal products which are just shit, and their argument is that we're failing and failing fast. And I just think that they're throwing out a lot of shit really quickly, constantly. Have you come across that yourself, or is that just me?
Oh, listen, not only do people leave out the V, some people leave out the M, and a lot of people leave out the P, so sure. It's really challenging what something should be, and you put a lot of effort into making your definitions crisp and tight, and then people criticize you based on just being like, yeah, I know the definition has these 3 parts, but if you only use 2 of the parts, man, that's stupid. And therefore the whole thing is stupid. And you're like, I actually put a lot of care into the terminology and definitions here. Not to like, oh, I'm a genius, but there's a reason we call it the minimum viable product. So as you say, people who are just like, well, I'm just gonna fail fast at whatever, and then learn from that. That doesn't count. That's nothing to be proud of. That's like running an experiment where your goal is to just people are just like, well, we'll just ship it and see what happens. And I wrote this in the book, and I say this all the time. If your plan is to ship it and see what happens, you are guaranteed to succeed at seeing what happens. Something is definitely going to happen, I promise. And you can always claim that as a success and say that you learned a great deal, but that doesn't impress me. What do we think of I just talked about all this accounting stuff, it felt like for hours, I'm sure. That's bringing a level of rigor into product development that I think is sorely needed. Just throwing a bunch of stuff around and seeing that's nothing to be proud of. It's like walking into a chemistry lab and being like, yeah, I'm just gonna mix chemicals for a while until something happens. It's that's not science, that's not chemistry, plus you're gonna be dead soon, be careful. And I feel the same way about a startup, if you're just throwing stuff around. But also, a lot of people whose MVP is not actually a product, it doesn't provide any benefit to customers and they're really proud of themselves. I even once, we were doing Lean Startup Machine, which is a weekend hackathon, and we had a team that was pitching their supposedly winning presentation, and they basically had a landing page that people could click on. And they were like, wow, we're so proud of ourselves. We got a 25% click-through rate on the button. And I was like, well, it's 25%, how does that compare to your scientific theory of what was supposed to happen? How many customers did you talk to? They're like, what do you mean? Well, did you collect their contact info after they pushed the button? Oh no, with an MVP. Right? So it's the build, measure, learn loop is a continuous cycle. It's supposed to be for continuous innovation. The idea that you just do one thing and then you're done, and I got 25%, that's not real entrepreneurship. Okay, that is faking it. That's just someone who wants to get a gold star. But guess what? Unlike in school, entrepreneurship, there are no gold stars. You never get a promotion, you never get a good job. The only thing you can win in entrepreneurship is the right to stay alive and keep slogging through even more difficult challenges. It never gets easier. It's just monotonically more difficult levels until the company finally dies or you get fired. That's it. So if you're an entrepreneur for real, that's what you're signing up for. And so you don't need some expert guru to tell you 25% is good enough or compare your numbers. It's what do you have to do to focus all your energy on the one thing that matters, which is creating a sustainable business that will make your customers' lives better? And that's what all the tactics like MVP, pivot, continuous deployments, but all those tactics are simply in the service of that one goal. And so people who are serious about that take these definitions seriously, and they don't go, slashing off half the thing and then saying it doesn't work. It's no kidding, it doesn't work. However, one last thing I'll say, way better to be misunderstood than ignored. So I really enjoy the backlash because I mean people are taking us seriously in a way they really didn't 2 or 3 years ago. So thank you to all our critics who are not paying much attention. At least they're paying some attention. That's a big improvement.
Cool. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Harold, please. 1 second.
Hi, you mentioned getting to grips with the levers that were generating the growth in your business. I was thinking of things like conjoint analysis, but could you mention 2 or 3 of the tools you found most useful in doing that?
I'm going to give you really bad news. I think the tools are horrible, and I'm an advisor to several of the companies that make the tools, so I'm as much to blame as anybody. I am not impressed. And so most of the companies I know either build their own analytics tools for this or they just put in Excel. The point of this exercise is to keep things simple enough that everyone in the company can understand. So like part of the problem with conjoint analysis, with shadow variables and sensitivity analysis and all these like fancy tools is even if you're able to use them to make a decision, you can't use them to explain things to your co-founders and employees because most people are simply not numerate enough to follow that fancy stuff. I mean, how many times do you like present a fancy spreadsheet with complicated derivatives and super complicated analysis, and someone says, "Hey, I want to check your assumptions, make sure you got it right." You know, you never see that in a political debate, like, "Oh, interesting statistic." We look at the fine print and make sure you know. People look at the top line number and they either believe it or they don't believe it based on some idiosyncratic, you know, whatever, and then that's it. You're stuck with that. So I really believe in tools that are so simple, everybody in the company, down to the lowliest employee, can understand and use the tools themselves to help themselves make good decisions. And that's why the very simple A/B split test, you know, cohort analysis, just really simple, measuring against the 4 or 5 metrics from the engine of growth that really matters. That's why those simple frameworks are so powerful, because it allows anybody who wants to be like, you know, I'm just gonna run a quick experiment myself to figure out, hey, we're in the paid engine of growth. Did that feature I just added, did that help us improve marginal profit per customer? Because if the answer is no, just stop doing it, take the feature out, do something else.
Okay, Joe Mellon.
Hello, Eric. I run a online startup incubator, and we try to help founders. And basically, what we do is we ask founders to basically.
Or task, yeah.
Sorry. Give one piece of one non-vanity metric, like select one for their company, and then give that to us each week. And we use that as a way of kind of motivating them. So if that number stagnates, then maybe they'll start looking more at their traction or something like that. As a way of like motivating them to start to maybe even like look into things like lean to better execute. And I was wondering, like, how have you found ways to motivate people to get into lean as opposed to just building what they want? Does that make sense? Yeah.
You got the process totally right, which is, I drew this diagram in the book. I call it the startup way. The foundation is accountability, then process, then culture, then people. Most people think about supporting startups, look for startup advice, they go top down. How do I find and retain and hire the right people? Maybe we'll talk about culture. How do we focus more? How do we build an innovative culture? How do we get people to speak them and all the cultural stuff? My favorite is like startups should really focus. Everyone knows startups should focus, right? It's like, yeah, no kidding. Telling a startup to focus is like telling someone who's overweight that they should lose weight. It's like, yeah, no kidding. Very helpful. Thank you for that advice. But how? What is the mechanism by which we can achieve focus? Well, that's because culture is an artifact that's left behind by the process that you use to make decisions. And the process that you use is determined, I think, almost entirely by how you're held accountable. If you think about all that accounting stuff we were talking about, if you're held accountable to vanity metrics, I don't care how much lean mojo you ingest and how many books you read, like when push comes to shove and you got a board meeting coming up and the vanity metrics are too low, you were gonna juice the numbers. I know it. Because you're basically paid to juice the numbers. That's your job. And you're going to get fired if you don't, and you're going to do it. And you're going to rationalize it, and you're going to convince yourself that it's an MVP, and you're going to, lean wash it if you're an acolyte, or just do it the normal way. But, the accountability systems rule everything. So I think your idea of getting your companies to give you real metrics, at least one every week, is really smart. And if you can convince them to give you only real metrics and get all the vanity metrics out, and even better if you can convince them to use real metrics, the right ones that are aligned with their engine of growth, then I think you'll find over time they'll be able to convince themselves that the process they're using is simply not working. But I'll give you one caveat to that. It's really important for people who are serious and you want to make the argument that they should do things our way, you've got to be able to make the argument from first principles that focusing on these specific metrics will lead to this specific growth outcome. You got to be able to do the math. I can't tell you how many people, like, they just arbitrarily pick some metrics that they think are important, like lifetime value of customer and retention rate of customer. And they're like, we're trying to get our retention from 25% to 35%. And I'm like, so what? Why should I care about that? And they're like, well, we all know that great products have great retention, right? I'm like, no, I missed that class. Explain it to me. Because like, if I'm building a dating site and it has great retention, customers are angry. They're trying to get off the dating site. They don't want to be on the dating site for months on end. So like, the metrics that matter have to be aligned with your business strategy. So you tell me the metrics that matter. So if someone's at all skeptical, you got to be able to sit them down and say, let me make you a spreadsheet of how our metrics, if we get them to our targets, will lead to awesome vanity metrics in the future. And if you can't do that math, you're not going to, you can't really withstand any kind of criticism. And, for your companies in the incubator, I would be especially worried as soon as you bring in outside investors to join their board, that if they can't do the math, 10 minutes later, they're going to be doing press releases. I can't tell you, I'm in a lot of board meetings where if I miss one board meeting, there's a publicist hired, press release filed, ready to go out by the next board meeting. It's like I have to be there constantly, being like, no, because the fundamental accounting system has not been switched over, and so the pressure to do vanity metrics is just present all the time. And the best thing you can do, I think, as an incubator is help your companies, first you create for them, then eventually you help them create for themselves and for their employees an accountability system that is denominated in stuff that actually matters to customers instead of total BS. Think about I was just so struck this morning at the Apple event. Think about all the metrics they revealed. Like, as a customer, how many of those metrics do you care about? I was sitting there being like, I don't care. Like, if I can't send messages, I don't care that 180 million other people can, right? It's like if the goddamn Maps app doesn't work, I don't care how much money you paid out to developers. If the developers I want to work with they can't make a living, I'm not impressed that you paid out. It's like, vanity metrics fundamentally do not serve customers, they serve our own ego. So like, do you have the courage to say, this isn't about ego, it's about our customers, let's actually make their life better?
Sorry, okay, Joe, and then Eric, how much time do you have?
Sorry, say that again.
Yeah, sorry, Eric,
Yeah?
how much time do you have for questions?
I don't know.
Let's keep going then.
Yeah, I think maybe I'm supposed to be on a conference call right now. Hold on. Wait.
Just
Shouldn't have asked.
Assume that we were.
Sorry, we're waiting for you.
Yeah, just one. And,
Sure.
Okay, I think we're okay.
how many minutes?
I want to find out from you.
Yeah, go for it.
Hey Eric, being a very passionate Mancunian and wanting to see Manchester's tech community be a top 5 European startup destination, what advice would you give to our lean startup group here? What would you be your big things for us to move strongly forward from tonight?
Yes, well, first of all, be better about your calendar than I am, because I'm just being notified that I'm actually supposed to be on this call. And I just got so excited about what we were talking about that I completely carried away. So I apologize. If the people I'm supposed to be on the call with are on the live stream, maybe I apologize to them. So I gotta be quick and I gotta get going. But let me just say that the number one thing for this group and all groups like it is don't yourself be focused on the vanity metrics. Focus on building a small but passionate core of people who come back week after week. Hold yourselves and each other accountable for doing what you said you were going to do at the last meeting. Don't worry so much about the big speakers and growing fast. Like build it up yourself. And then whenever you have fancy outside speakers come in to boost up your revenue, like your membership, also cultivate your own speakers. Get your members, even the ones who don't feel qualified, to share their real stories of what's actually going on so other founders can learn from them. That's the most valuable activity that a group like this can do. That's how we advance the state of the art in entrepreneurship. Anyway, I apologize to have to hit and run. I'm glad we could do this and hope it was useful. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.